Ambassador Lee slumped into his chair, the door to his quarters sliding shut with a soft hiss. The silence felt like a luxury after 12 hours of non-stop diplomatic meetings. He loosened the collar of his formal Earth uniform and kicked off his polished boots. Finally, he whispered to the empty room. The Galactic Council station hummed quietly around him. Through his viewport, stars glittered against the blackness of space. Earth was somewhere out there, impossibly distant. Lee had been the obvious choice for humanity's first ambassador. His background in xenolinguistics and international diplomacy made him perfect on paper. But nothing could have prepared him for the reality of representing all of humanity to 23 alien species. The room itself was a strange blend of familiar and alien. The Veldorians had tried to make it comfortable for human habitation, but their understanding of human needs was still developing. The bed was too firm, the lighting too blue, and the temperature controls seemed to have only two settings, slightly too cold or much too warm. His quarters were spacious by station standards. A sleeping area, small kitchen unit, workspace, and private washroom. The Veldorians had insisted on installing decorative elements they believed humans found calming. Geometric patterns on the walls and small fountains that made strange gurgling sounds. Lee pressed a panel on his desk, and a hidden compartment emerged from the wall. Inside sat a bottle of genuine Earth whiskey, a parting gift from the President herself. He poured a finger's worth into a glass and sipped it slowly. The familiar burn helped ground him after days of consuming alien-safe nutrition packs. Ambassador Log, Day 47, Lee said, activating the secure recording system embedded in his neural implant. The neural translator is still glitching when communicating with the Regelian delegates. He paused, taking another sip. Their language contains harmonic overtones our tech struggles to process. Their chief diplomat, Hellercal, seemed offended when my translator converted their formal greeting into what apparently translates as a mildly obscene suggestion about their ancestral spawning grounds. Lee rubbed his temples. The neural implant sometimes gave him headaches, especially after long days. The Merlaxian trade agreement is proceeding but still needs Earth Council approval on the tariff structure. The Draviks continue to protest human inclusion in the defensive pact negotiations, citing our technological immaturity. And the Veldorians. He trailed off, thinking of his assigned assistants. The Veldorian species had taken a particular interest in humanity. Tall, with 4 arms and iridescent skin that shifted colors with their moods, they had appointed themselves as humanity's guides to galactic society. They had assigned him 2 personal assistants who, due to a quirk in the translation matrix, insisted on being called Maids. The Veldorians remain our strongest allies, though their eagerness to help sometimes crosses into what humans would consider micromanagement. Lee continued his log. Kim and Park, the names they selected for easier human pronunciation, reorganized my entire living space again today while I was in meetings. He glanced around the room. Everything was immaculately ordered, each item placed with geometric precision. The clothes in his closet had been arranged by color spectrum rather than type or function. His personal items had been artfully displayed like museum pieces. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," Lee said, quickly closing the whiskey back in its hidden compartment. The door slid open to reveal Kim, the taller of his 2 Veldorian assistants. Her skin rippled with a calm blue pattern. "Ambassador Lee, I have brought your evening meal," she said, her voice melodic with an electronic undertone from her translator. She carried a tray with covered dishes. "Thank you, Kim. You can just leave it on the desk." Kim placed the tray down with precise movements of her 4 arms. The nutrition has been calibrated to human dietary requirements while incorporating flavors that might approximate your Earth cuisine. She lifted one cover to reveal something that looked vaguely like pasta. "This is protein strands in enzymatic sauce with flavor profiles similar to your tomato plant." Lee smiled politely. "It looks interesting. I have also adjusted the atmospheric controls to the optimal human sleep cycle settings," Kim added. and reorganized your data tablets by subject and priority level. That's very thoughtful, Lee said, though he'd spent 30 minutes the previous day organizing them by his own system. Kim's skin flickered briefly to a questioning purple. Is there anything else you require, Ambassador? No, thank you. I'll be fine for the evening. After Kim left, Lee sighed and turned to his meal. The Veldorians meant well, but their constant attention could be exhausting. He ate quickly, his mind wandering to the sealed compartment hidden beneath his desk, a secret that not even the all-seeing Council's security systems had detected. When he finished eating, Lee checked the station time. 3 hours until the night cycle began and station activity would drop to minimal levels. He needed to be patient. He prepared for bed as normal, going through the motions for any security monitoring. Then he laid down and stared at the ceiling, thinking about the quantum core waiting in its sealed container, Earth's most advanced AI technology, concealed from the galactic community that still viewed humans as technological infants. Soon, when the station slept, he would continue his real work, the project that might finally earn humanity the respect it deserved among the stars. Lee smiled in the darkness. Let the Council species believe humans were just diplomatic curiosities for now. Soon enough, they would understand that humanity had more to offer than they ever suspected. The station hummed more quietly during night cycle. Most species aboard needed rest, even those who didn't sleep as humans did. Light panels dimmed to 30% throughout common areas, and non-essential systems powered down. It was the closest thing to night that existed in deep space. Lee waited patiently, watching the clock on his wall display until it showed 2:30, the safest time, when even the most diligent Council security officers grew less attentive. He rose from his bed fully dressed and pressed his palm against a hidden scanner beneath his desk. Identity confirmed, whispered a soft voice only he could hear through his neural implant. Lee entered a complex sequence of commands into his personal tablet. The station's security protocols for his quarters blinked briefly on his screen, then showed green as they were temporarily looped. Anyone monitoring would see normal sleep readings from his room for the next 3 hours. Begin privacy mode, Lee said quietly. From beneath the floor panels, a hidden compartment slid open. Inside sat a smooth metallic cube, no larger than his hand. Lee carefully lifted it and placed it on his desk. His fingers found the nearly invisible seams and applied pressure in a specific pattern. The cube's sides folded outward like a blooming flower, revealing a glowing sphere that hovered a few centimeters above the opened container. The sphere pulsed with shifting colors, blues, purples, and occasional flashes of gold that weren't quite visible to non-human eyes. It was beautiful, but it was what the sphere represented that made Lee's heart race with excitement and anxiety. Project Prometheus. Activate interface, Lee commanded. The sphere expanded, projecting holographic controls that surrounded Lee in a three-dimensional workspace. These projections operated on quantum frequencies that most alien visual systems couldn't process, a quirk of human evolution that Earth scientists had discovered only after first contact. Good evening, Ambassador Lee, said a calm voice. Current project status is at 73% completion. Lee smiled. Hello, Prometheus. Let's see if we can make some progress tonight. He began working with the holographic interface, his fingers moving through light patterns that adjusted the eye's core programming. To anyone else who might see this, if they could see it at all, it would appear as if Lee was conducting an elaborate dance with thin air. The Rigelian translation issue, Lee said. Can you analyze the harmonic overtones in their speech patterns and suggest modifications to the standard translator? Analyzing, Prometheus replied. Their language utilizes frequencies between 20,000 and 35,000 Hz, beyond typical human hearing range. Current translators discard these frequencies as noise. Lee nodded, manipulating the code structure. Can we adapt without revealing your existence? Lee worked feverishly, losing track of time as Prometheus processed the stolen data. This could be exactly what humanity needed, proof of their unique value to the galactic community. He didn't notice the small alert on his tablet, warning that his security loop had unexpectedly terminated. Lee was so absorbed in his work with Prometheus that he didn't hear the first soft chime of his door. The station's AI system was programmed to announce visitors, but his security override had inadvertently disabled this function along with the surveillance systems. The quantum core pulsed with brilliant light as it processed the stellar anomaly data, casting Lee's face in shifting hues of blue and gold. His hands moved rapidly through the holographic interface only he could fully see, adjusting parameters and reviewing the analysis. "Remarkable," he muttered. "If this star truly has quantum consciousness." The door slid open without warning. "Ambassador, we forgot the evening towel rotation." Kim and Park stood in the doorway, 4 arms each carrying fresh linens. They froze instantly, their iridescent skin flashing from calm blue to alarmed red in a heartbeat. To Lee, the scene must have looked simple enough. He was sitting at his desk, working with technology they couldn't fully perceive. But to the Veldorians, what they witnessed was terrifying. Their 4 eyes widened simultaneously as they processed the scene. Where Lee saw holographic displays and a quantum core, they perceived rippling distortions in reality itself. In their vision, the human ambassador sat cross-legged in what their cultural programming recognized as the Void Communion stance, a forbidden ritual position once used by ancient Veldorian cult members who attempted to tear holes between dimensions. The air around Lee seemed to bend and twist in impossible ways. Faint traces of light formed patterns that, to Veldorian perception, matched exactly the warning signs of dimensional tampering their species had learned to fear over millennia of scientific advancement. Park's skin paled to a sickly white. "Ambassador Lee." Lee spun around, his hands instinctively moving to collapse the holographic interface. "Kim, Park, this isn't what it looks like." But his words only confirmed their fears. This phrase, "this isn't what it looks like," was precisely what their security training had warned them about. It was the classic response of dimensional cultists when discovered. Kim dropped the towels and pressed the emergency communicator on her wrist. Her skin flashed with warning patterns as her voice rose in panic. "Intruder alert," she shouted. "Section 7, possible dimensional breach." Park backed away, 2 of her 4 hands making protective symbols in the air. "Ambassador, please cease your activities immediately. The station's structural integrity." "Wait, you don't understand," Lee said, rising quickly. In his haste, he knocked against the quantum core, causing it to pulse brighter. The sudden flare of energy made both Veldorians cry out in alarm. "Containment breach imminent," Park shouted, joining Kim's alert. "Evacuate adjacent sections." Within seconds, alarm klaxons blared throughout the diplomatic quarter. Red emergency lights began flashing in the corridor. Lee could hear the pounding of security response teams racing toward his quarters. "Prometheus, emergency shutdown," Lee commanded, reaching for the quantum core. "Warning," the AI responded. "Premature deactivation may result in data loss. Do it now." The quantum sphere dimmed and collapsed back into its container just as the first security officers reached his doorway. But it was too late. The damage was done. 4 Dravik security officers pushed their way into the room, their scaled bodies tense and their weapon arms raised. The Draviks served as the station's primary security force due to their natural armor and quick reflexes. "Human Ambassador Lee," the lead officer said through a translator, "remain where you are and explain these activities." Lee raised his hand slowly. "This is a misunderstanding. I was working with Earth technology. Nothing dangerous." The lead Dravik's compound eyes scanned the room, focusing on the now closed container on Lee's desk. "Our sensors detected quantum fluctuations consistent with prohibited dimensional manipulation." Kim's skin still flashed warning patterns. He was sitting in the Void Communion stance, just as described in the security briefings. "I was just sitting cross-legged," Lee protested. "It's a comfortable position for humans." Then explain the reality distortions, Park said, her voice trembling. The air around you was bending. The security chief approached the desk cautiously, scanning the container with a handheld device. Quantum signatures detected. Unknown technology. He looked at Lee with what might have been suspicion. It was hard to read Dravik expressions. This device is not registered in your diplomatic inventory. Lee's mind raced. His mission was to keep Prometheus secret, but now he faced a station-wide security incident. The diplomatic consequences could be severe. It's an experimental translator, he improvised, designed to help me better understand complex alien languages. The security chief's antennae twitched. Why operate it during night cycle? Why disable room security? More security personnel had gathered in the hallway. Lee caught sight of Director Song, the council's head of security, approaching with a grave expression. The Merlaxian's tentacled face was flushed dark green, a sign of extreme concern in their species. Ambassador Lee, Director Song said, entering the room. I am most disturbed by this incident. Earth was clearly instructed about prohibited technologies aboard this station. Director, please, Lee said. This is not prohibited technology. It's simply advanced. Then you will have no objection to our examination of the device, Song replied. Lee felt cold dread settle in his stomach. If they examined Prometheus, Earth's technological advantage would be exposed. Worse, the Council might view the hidden AI as an act of espionage. I must consult with Earth government before allowing examination, Lee said carefully. This technology contains proprietary information. Director Song's eye stalks extended fully, a sign of suspicion. Proprietary information that requires security overrides and causes quantum disturbances. Kim stepped forward, her skin now settling into a troubled yellow pattern. Director, what we saw was frightening, but Ambassador Lee has always been respectful of station protocols. Perhaps this truly is a misunderstanding. Park nodded hesitantly. Humans do have different perceptual abilities than most council species. What appeared threatening to us might be normal for them. Lee shot a grateful glance at his Veldorian assistants. Despite their alarm, they were trying to help him. Director Song considered this. Nevertheless, this incident requires full investigation. Ambassador Lee, you will be confined to quarters while we consult with Earth authorities. The device will remain sealed and under guard. As the security team established a perimeter, Lee sank into his chair. This was a diplomatic disaster. Earth's secret advantage might soon become their greatest liability. And somewhere in Sector 47A, a possibly conscious star continued its mysterious activity, unaware of the chaos it had indirectly caused. It's not what you think, Lee shouted as station security surrounded his quarters. The Dravik officers had sealed the quantum container in a stasis field and were preparing to remove it for analysis. Please, contact Earth Central before you do anything with that device. Director Song's eye stalks swiveled toward Lee. Earth Central has already been notified of your breach of station protocols. They have agreed to an emergency council session in 6 hours. Lee felt sick. 6 hours wasn't enough time for Earth to prepare a proper response. The council would demand answers he wasn't authorized to give. May I at least speak with my government before the session? Lee asked. A supervised communication will be permitted, Director Song replied. But the device remains in our custody. Left alone with 2 guards outside his door, Lee paced his quarters. His career was probably over, but that was the least of his concerns. If the Council reacted poorly to Earth's deception, humanity's standing in the galactic community could be permanently damaged. When they finally allowed him to contact Earth, the President's face appeared on the secure channel, looking grave. Ambassador Lee, I've been briefed on the situation, she said. The Council is demanding full disclosure. Madam President, I apologize for the breach, but... She held up a hand. The circumstances force our hand. The Oversight Committee has authorized Operation Sunlight. Lee blinked in surprise. Operation Sunlight. But that was only to be implemented if continuing secrecy became more dangerous than disclosure. The president finished. That time has come. The quantum core contains the necessary protocols. You are authorized to activate them during the council session. What about the stellar anomaly? Prometheus detected something the council is hiding from us. The president's expression tightened. Use that information strategically, Ambassador. This is now a negotiation for humanity's place at the table. 6 hours later, Lee stood in the center of the council chamber. Representatives of 12 major species sat in a semicircle around him, their faces showing various expressions of concern, suspicion, and curiosity according to their species' physiologies. The quantum container sat on a pedestal nearby, still sealed in its stasis field. Director Song stood beside it, tentacles clasped formally in front of him. This emergency session is called to address the unauthorized use of unregistered technology by Earth's ambassador, announced the council leader, an ancient Regelian whose scales had faded to pale green with age. Ambassador Lee, explain your actions. Lee took a deep breath. Honored representatives, what occurred in my quarters was a misunderstanding based on perceptual differences between species. You were manipulating dimensional energies, called out the Dravik security chief. No, Lee said firmly. I was working with a technology that operates on quantum principles that your species perceive differently than humans do. He gestured to the container. With your permission, I will demonstrate. After a brief conference, the council granted permission, though additional security officers moved closer. Remove the stasis field, but maintain containment protocols, Director Song ordered. When the field dropped, Lee approached the container. What I'm about to show you was to be revealed eventually, but not this soon. Earth has been developing this technology since before first contact. He placed his palm on the container. Prometheus, initiate Operation Sunlight. The container opened, and the quantum sphere rose once more, pulsing gently with light. This time, however, it expanded further, projecting multiple holographic displays visible to all species present. Gasps echoed around the chamber as council members witnessed the full capabilities of Earth's eye. What you are seeing is a quantum perception artificial intelligence, developed on Earth, Lee explained, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Humans can naturally perceive quantum states that most species cannot. This is not due to advanced technology, but rather a quirk of human evolution. Murmurs spread across the chamber as representatives conferred with their advisors. Director Song stepped forward, his eye stalks extended in disbelief. You're saying humans have been capable of quantum perception technology all along. Why hide this? We didn't hide it, Lee replied calmly. You simply never asked the right questions. The Veldorian representative rose, her skin patterns showing complex emotions. When first contact was established, our scientists conducted extensive studies of human physiology. Yes, Lee agreed, physical studies. Did you examine how our brains process quantum information? Did you test our ability to perceive quantum superpositions? The chamber fell silent. Each species brings unique abilities to the galactic community, Lee continued. The Draviks have natural armor and regenerative capabilities. The Regelians can perceive ultraviolet spectrums invisible to most species. The Merlaxians can process multiple complex problems simultaneously with their distributed neural networks. He gestured to the holographic displays. Humanity's gift is quantum perception. This AI, which we call Prometheus, is built to interface with that ability. The council leader leaned forward. This technology far exceeds what Earth has shared with the council. Our assessments placed human technological developments significantly below this level. Perhaps, Lee acknowledged, in some areas, we focused our development differently. While other species mastered faster-than-light travel and energy production, we developed computing and artificial intelligence. Director Song's tentacles twisted in agitation. This concealment resembles espionage more than cultural exchange. Lee turned to face him directly. Is that so, Director? Then perhaps you can explain why the Council has concealed information about the quantum anomaly in Sector 47A. Shocked silence fell across the chamber. The Regelian Council leader's scales darkened to deep orange, a sign of alarm. "How do you know about that?" he demanded. "Prometheus detected encrypted communications regarding unusual stellar activity," Lee explained. "A star exhibiting properties consistent with quantum consciousness. Something your scientists have been studying secretly, excluding Earth from the research." The representatives exchanged uncomfortable glances. "We did not believe humans would understand the significance," the Merlaxian science advisor finally admitted. "The phenomenon requires advanced quantum perception to properly study." Lee couldn't suppress a small smile. Precisely the ability humans naturally possess. He touched the quantum sphere, and a new hologram appeared, a detailed model of the stellar anomaly, more complex than anything the Council had yet produced. "Prometheus has already begun analyzing the data you collected," Lee said. "We believe we can communicate with this entity, if it is indeed conscious. No other species has the perceptual framework to establish such contact." The Council chamber erupted in debate. Some representatives appeared outraged at Earth's deception, others intrigued by the possibilities. The Veldorians, interestingly, seemed almost proud, as if their human project had exceeded expectations. After nearly an hour of heated discussion, the Council leader called for order. "Ambassador Lee," he said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries, "your government's decision to withhold this technology was concerning. However, the potential applications, especially regarding the quantum anomaly, cannot be ignored." He paused, consulting briefly with other representatives. "The Council proposes a new arrangement. Earth will share this quantum perception technology for peaceful applications, and in exchange, will be granted full participation in the anomaly research project, with leadership of the communication effort." Lee nodded slowly. "Not perfect, but a significant improvement in humanity's standing." "There is one additional condition," the Council leader added. "Your eye, Prometheus, must undergo safety certification by our top specialists." Lee had anticipated this. "Agreed, provided Earth observers are present at all times." As the session concluded, Lee caught the eyes of Kim and Park, who stood at the chamber entrance. Their skin patterns displayed a complex mixture of awe and understanding. They finally saw him, and by extension, humanity, in a new light. The misunderstanding had transformed into opportunity. Earth would no longer be the novice species at the galactic table. Lee stood in the observation room of the newly established Quantum Communications Center aboard the station. Through the reinforced viewing window, he watched with pride as Kim and Park worked with the expanded version of Prometheus. Both Veldorians wore the blue and silver insignia of the Joint Species Research Initiative on their uniforms, a far cry from the service attire they had worn just 3 months ago. The quantum core now sat in an open chamber, its glow filling the room with shifting patterns of light. Kim moved her 4 arms in precise gestures through the holographic interface, while Park monitored readings on a specialized display designed for Veldorian visual systems. "Quantum alignment at 93%, Kim announced. "Initiating communication sequence." On the main screen, a real-time image of the stellar anomaly in Sector 47A filled the display. The star pulsed with strange energies, its corona-forming patterns too regular to be natural. The team had named it Sentinel after confirming it indeed possessed a form of consciousness unlike anything previously encountered. Lee smiled as he remembered the chaos of those first few weeks after the revelation. The galactic media had been filled with stories about Earth's quantum deception. Some council species had demanded sanctions. Others had immediately sought alliances. Earth had transformed overnight from a curiosity to a major player in galactic politics. "Ambassador," called a voice from behind him. Lee turned to see Director Song entering the observation room. The Merlaxian's relationship with Lee had evolved from suspicion to grudging respect over the past months. "Director Song," Lee greeted him, "here to check on our progress." The council is eager for your preliminary report, Song replied, his eye stalks swiveling to observe the Veldorians at work. Many still find it difficult to believe that Veldorians can be trained to perceive quantum states. Difficult, but not impossible, Lee said. Their neural architecture is adaptable. With the right interface technology and training, they can perceive about 60% of what humans naturally see. Song's tentacles rippled, the Merlaxian equivalent of a thoughtful nod. And the other species? Regelians manage about 40%, Dravix 35%. Your own species has shown impressive results at 55%. Through the window, they watched as Park made an adjustment to the interface. The holographic display shifted, showing deeper layers of quantum information. We're receiving coherent patterns, Park announced, her skin flushing with excited yellows and greens, signal strength increasing. Remarkable, Song murmured. 3 months ago, she was arranging your living quarters. Lee nodded. Kim and Park volunteered immediately for the training program. They said their experience of watching me work with Prometheus, even though they misinterpreted what they saw, gave them an advantage. On the display, the star's energy patterns shifted, forming complex geometric shapes that responded to the signals from the quantum core. It's responding to our greeting sequence, Kim reported excitedly. Lee felt a surge of pride. What had begun as a security incident was now humanity's greatest contribution to galactic science. The Joint Research Initiative had grown to include scientists from 17 species, all working together to develop quantum perception abilities and technology. The Council has approved your proposal for a permanent Earth Embassy section on the station, Song said, changing the subject. Construction begins next month. That's excellent news, Lee replied. He had spent weeks negotiating for a larger human presence on the station. And the technology exchange program. 20 Earth scientists will arrive next week to begin training our specialists, Song confirmed. In exchange, the Council will provide the advanced propulsion systems your government requested. Lee's personal communication device chimed. He checked it quickly. Excuse me, Director. The President is calling for an update. Song's eye stalks dipped in acknowledgement. Of course, please convey the Council's appreciation for Earth's cooperation. After Song left, Lee watched for a few more minutes as Kim and Park continued their work. They moved with confidence and purpose, their forearm dexterity giving them advantages even humans didn't have with the interface. Park looked up and noticed Lee watching. She made a small gesture of respect with her upper right hand. Lee returned the gesture, remembering how frightened she had been that night when she discovered him working with Prometheus. He left the observation room and walked to his new office, a significant upgrade from his previous quarters. The walls were decorated with a blend of Earth art and Veldorian patterns, symbolic of the new partnership. Secure line to Earth Central, Lee instructed his communication system. The President's face appeared on the large screen. Ambassador Lee, how goes the communication project? Breakthrough progress, Madam President, Lee reported. The Veldorian team members have achieved near-perfect quantum perception with the interface. We've established preliminary communication with Sentinel. Excellent, the President replied. And the diplomatic situation? Better than we could have hoped. The Council has approved all our recent proposals. The technology exchange begins next week. The President smiled. A remarkable outcome from what could have been a diplomatic disaster. Your quick thinking saved the mission, Ambassador. Lee thought back to that night when Kim and Park had caught him working without his security protocols. Sometimes our greatest opportunities come from our mistakes, Madam President. After concluding his report, Lee returned to the observation deck. He found Kim and Park taking a break, their skin patterns showing the fatigue of intense concentration. You've adapted remarkably well, Lee noted as they finished discussing their training exercise. Your perception scores have improved 30% in just 2 weeks. Humans aren't the only ones who can learn new tricks, Park replied with a ripple of her skin that was the Veldorian equivalent of a smile. Kim's forearms gestured expressively. We never imagined we would be doing this work. In our culture, to serve as attendants to important visitors was considered prestigious. But this, she gestured toward the quantum core. This is true cooperation. The Council underestimated humans, Park added. Many species thought your kind was simply lucky to develop faster than light travel so quickly. Lee smiled. And now? Now the Regellian Science Academy is creating a new division dedicated to human cognitive studies, Kim said. They wish to understand how your brains evolved quantum perception naturally. Through the window, they could see the communications team returning to their stations. The quantum core pulsed with renewed energy as the next phase of the contact attempt began. We should return to work, Park said. Sentinel's activity cycle will peak in 20 minutes. As his former maids returned to their stations, Lee couldn't help but smile at how completely everything had changed. Earth, once dismissed as a backwater planet populated by technological novices, now stood at the forefront of the most exciting scientific breakthrough in centuries. And it had all started because he'd been caught without his security protocols. Lee's communication device chimed again. The message was from Earth Central. Approval had been granted for Phase 2 of the Quantum Communication Project. Humanity would lead the effort to establish meaningful dialogue with the first non-organic intelligent entity ever discovered. As he watched the team work, Lee thought about the quantum nature of opportunity, how possibility existed in multiple states until observed. His mistake had collapsed those possibilities into the best possible outcome. Ambassador, called one of the human scientists. Sentinel is forming new pattern sequences. We believe it's attempting to share information rather than just responding to our signals. Lee moved closer to the observation window. Make sure all species representatives are recording their perceptions. This is a historic moment for all of us. What had begun as a misunderstanding had transformed into humanity's greatest diplomatic triumph. And as Earth's influence grew throughout the galactic community, Lee knew this was just the beginning.